All right, greetings and salutation as we begin Unit 9 talking about retirement. So, today, the first thing we're going to talk about is an IRA, an individual retirement account. You'll probably hear it called an IRA more times than not. It is set up through the government. There's two different ways you can set up an IRA, and we're going to talk about it. So, here's the link to the IRS, and we're going to touch base on a lot of these things. We'll come back to these. And if you click on IRA here, it'll bring up this link. And this is from Bankrate. What is an IRA and how does it work? And today I'm going to highlight most of the key points, and we'll come back and kind of glance through these and see if we missed over anything. But when we talk about an IRA, so there's two different ones that we talked about. Like I said, the first one being the traditional IRA. So a traditional IRA that offers a tax deduction for the year in which the contribution was made. So you make contributions with pre-tax income, so you don't pay tax on any money you put into the account. So if I put $1,000 or $2,000 in for my retirement, I'm not paying taxes on that money right now. So it's a good way to defer some of your taxes for later. And the main reason that people are doing things like this, and we'll talk about this more as we get going, if you're making a lot of money now, you could be in a higher tax bracket, which means you're going to pay a higher rate. And we talked about this before when we were talking about taxes. So the thought process is I'm going to put some of this money away and not pay taxes on it until later when I'm retired and I'm not making quite as much money, and I can take that out and I can pay taxes on it then. So what that does, it's going to lower your tax rate. And we talked about that before when we were talking about your tax liability. So if you're working and say you're making six figures, I'm making $100,000. Well, when you retire, you're not making that same amount. So when you start pulling that money out of your retirement, instead of paying, the tax liability of 100,000, we might only be paying tax liability on 30. And that's a big difference, and that's a great way for people to be able to save some money. Um, so continuing what we're talking about, it can grow tax deferred in the account, and when you withdraw it at retirement age, and that's for most people going to be 59 and a half or later, then you pay taxes on the distribution. So again, at this age, we're probably not going to be having as much money, so our tax liability is going to be a lot lower. And that's what we're looking for, is trying to control that tax liability and put us in the right tax bracket. You don't want to be paying too high taxes. You want to try and get it just right. The other one that we have, the other example, or not example, but the other type is a Roth IRA. So a Roth IRA gives investors the chance to invest money after taxes. So there's no tax break today, but you're putting money in, and when you take it out, so the money can grow tax free in the account, and then you can take the contributions and earnings out tax free in retirement too. So, and Uncle Sam's going to get you one way or the other. I guess that's the main thing you could take away from this. Either you're going to pay taxes on it later with a traditional IRA, or you're going to pay taxes on it now with a Roth IRA. So one way or another, like I said, Uncle Sam's going to get his money. And this has changed, I guess, over in the last couple years. Talking to my parents, they've retired, so they've experienced some of this, and maybe your grandparents or your parents have. Probably not your parents, but maybe your grandparents. Contributions have an annual maximum $6,000 for those under age 50 in 2021, and 7,000 for those 50 and older. So it's the government again is just trying to make sure you don't put all of your money away. And you want to be careful because once you start putting that money away, it pretty much has to stay there. When you start taking it out, there's some serious penalties if you're taking it out before you retire. So this is not what you might think of as a traditional account where we can hold money. This is strictly for your retirement. This is not money we're going to have access to on a regular or daily basis. Once you start pulling from that before retirement, you can pay some hefty penalties and a pretty high tax rate. So continuing, we've made our contributions on letter E. Eventually, you do have to take out, and they have minimum amounts you have to take out, and these are your required minimum distributions, or you can see it RMD. And you have to take those out when you reach 70 and a half. So at 70 and a half, the government says, hey, you have to retire. You have to start taking your money out. And when you get to that point, so for most of you, that's going to be a long, long, long time away. It's your responsibility to ensure that you take out the full amount, that you're taking out the right amount. In most years, the deadline is December 31st. If you haven't withdrawn your RMD amount by the deadline, any money not withdrawn is taxed at 50%. So you don't want to get caught in the situation where you forget to take your money out and they're going to tax it. And 50% is a very, very, very high tax rate. So what the IRA does, you're going to put money into an account, and with an IRA, you can invest in almost any kind of asset: savings account, CDs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. All the things that we've talked about from before that you're going to be able to invest into. And this is just a way of having a lump sum that you're going to invest with. Now, it is important to note, however, that not all financial institutions will offer every kind of investment. So be careful of who you're putting your money with and who's over your IRA. So let's take a look at a couple of our websites here. Like I said, we had Bankrate. We'll kind of scroll through here. An IRA is a type of investment accounts with tax benefits that you can help save for retirement. You can invest in almost anything using an IRA. So it's best to think of an IRA like a special wrapper, not that goes around your account and gives it special tax advantages. So I don't think he has a SoundCloud. You can check. Um, Scrolling through again, talking about IRAs, we talked about traditional and we talked about Roth. So we're good there. And we talk about income thresholds that govern who can make qualified contributions to the account. If you make too much money, you won't be able to enjoy the tax break of the traditional IRA, but you'll be able to take advantage of both of the Roth IRA. Even if you have to establish, I'm not sure. We won't talk about this because that's more money than most of us will see probably. So let's see what the income thresholds are and see if they have these. Deductible. How much can I contribute? Contribute. We talked about that. Who can contribute? How they're deductible. So here's your traditional and your Roth deadlines. When can I withdraw? And technically you can, but you're going to pay a lot of taxes on it, so you got to be careful about that. And I don't see the minimums and the maximums. I'll have to look for that one a little bit more and see if I can find that for you guys. Again, I don't think you'll be retiring anytime soon. So again, our traditional and our Roth, they have caps. And scrolling through. So, and the next one we're going to talk about the 401k and where that's a little bit different. And again, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So you're going to open up one through a bank or through a financial service provider. You have to find one that offers an IRA. They mentioned Vanguard and Fidelity. I've heard of Fidelity, and I believe I've heard of Vanguard. So they're both pretty good. But again, see what their charges are. See what it's going to look like. See how those costs are going to be broken down. So, and again, here's our IRS site. So this was letter A here, brings us to this one. So deduction limits, contributions, how to get in it. You can roll it over into another 401k that might be managed by someone else if you're to change jobs. So that's kind of how that would work. And I think well, that is going to be about it for IRAs.